Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast, brought to you by LeanTossup. My name is Robert Martin, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host BuckMetrics. Here we are. We are here at Rivalry Week, Thanksgiving weekend for Americans, and just a weekend for anybody else who's not American, but an important weekend for college football and for huge rivalries. How are you doing tonight?
Good. I'll just get right into it since this is a question that relates to the most pressing game of the week. Apparently they got the guy, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
With the wait, with
They, they got the guy that murdered. Apparently Jim Harbaugh was murdered, and they've been having like these funerals for him. And I guess since we last had our pod, they found the guy that actually murdered him and fired him. He was an assistant coach named Partridge.
yeah.
That's my interpretation.
So
Um, yeah.
yeah, couple of things. Does everybody who works at Michigan State have a weird name, like Stallions, Partridge? Like, are they all animal names? That's very weird. But secondly, like, isn't it kind of weird to fire the assistant coach that was cooperating with the investigation? That seems like not the right thing to do.
I don't think he was cooperating. He basically was found instructing people to destroy evidence. So
Oh, okay. Then yeah, okay,
yeah,
then that was the. Okay, he was. Yeah, so that's. So again, so now they've stopped that guy from committing more crimes. So that's a
yeah,
positive.
yeah,
This this is gonna like. It's so funny that like the Michigan fans were so mad about this, and
yeah.
now it's just like, yeah, okay, maybe we were mistaken. But like they're not. I mean, they're like this is gonna be so bad. Like
Yep.
years of wins are gonna be vacated over this. Like, yeah, it's
I don't. I'm not going to know to pretend how the NCAA will mete out justice here, but just I can just tell you in a big picture. The more times and the more dramatically that you change your narrative and explanation is a function of just how screwed you are. And it's just gone from it didn't happen to okay, well it didn't happen this way, then it didn't happen that way, and then it became well everybody does it, and now it's radio silence from Ward Manuel, who had no shortage of words, a couple weeks ago, and boy, he has no comment now. That kind of says it all.
yeah. I mean, the thing of it is, it's very possible that like again, and we'll talk about Michigan later, but like say they lose this weekend, if you're JG McCarthy, why do you play the bowl game, right? Like, and I think if you're maintaining the integrity of Michigan potentially winning a college football playoff, okay. But if you're maintaining the integrity of I have no idea what bowl they'd even be going to because where they go to bowls now makes no sense. But if you're maintaining like, oh, Michigan winning a New Year's Six bowl, that's a lot lower priority because they could just be replaced with, I guess, Iowa. So, like, suddenly, if you're going to punish them, suddenly it's like, yeah, actually, by the way, we're going to suspend Harbaugh for the postseason too. Like, stuff like that could happen. So that's important to note.
Yeah. Also worth noting, I'm just kind of curious how you feel. Um, what kind of value add do you think Ward Manuel is offering the College Football Playoff Committee? You might remember a couple weeks ago I mentioned that
Yes.
he's actually on the committee. I'd imagine his input is just awesome based on how he's handled this whole thing.
I mean, like, this is, again, another reason why you shouldn't have people whose, like, schools you're discussing on this committee. That's just one for one. What are you even doing? Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, I talked to these guys, and it wasn't that bad. Like that's actually worse because then you're like, explain what you did, and you're I don't know. I talked to Harbaugh. He has a nice family. What are you supposed to do? Like, it's such a weird. I don't know. Just a
Yeah.
weird position to be in, and how do you even deal with that? But
Yeah.
yeah,
Agree. Okay. Let's get into it. In terms of who won the week. To me, there's only one winner, and that is Conference USA.
100%.
You have New Mexico State as a 20, well, it got up to 25, I guess, 25 and a half.
25, 26, some places, yeah.
Yeah, point dog. I felt a little, I wouldn't say stupid, but just kind of like, not the best bet then if I only got plus 21. Well, actually, they could have given 20 and a half and covered at Auburn. Got my got my T-shirt to
Yeah.
commemorate the over cash. So I
What
was delighted with that.
what could if you were like New Mexico State minus 20 and a half against Auburn?
Oh
Like
my
what
god.
would they just been like, okay, you own the sports book now? Is that
Yeah,
what it
it's just
like?
at that point. Yeah, I think
You
that's
just
kind
you
of
own the
it.
sports book. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is insane. Like they almost covered the reverse spread of a 20 some odd points. Like, and the best part is too, and I had forgotten that it was about this too. It's a buy game, so they paid New Mexico State to come to them and beat them by
Yeah,
21 points.
1.5
Like,
million dollars.
yeah,
Yeah.
money well spent.
Um, and then on the other side of that too, and I say this as somebody who's a huge fan of JMU quarterback Jordan McLeod. GMU losing on the day they get all of that attention, which we'll get to a little bit more later. It really just kind of puts more of a focus on, hey, guess what? Liberty is undefeated. It's kind of unavoidable at this point. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was funny. Stuart Mandel was saying, and I was somebody else was saying, well, now watch. Everybody's going to say, well, actually, Liberty's kind of good, and Conference USA isn't that bad. It's like, well, you know what? Guess what? That's the truth, and that's been the truth basically since we were about 4 or 5 weeks in, and we saw this conference is pretty freaking good. It's better than the American, that's for sure.
Since we've done our rankings, we have never not had Liberty in the top 10.
Yeah,
Like, just period. End of sentence. That's just a statement that we could say. And again, it's not necessarily a one-to-one transitive property, but I think Liberty did beat New Mexico State when they played earlier this year. And it's like, yeah, Liberty, like, if you, and again, this isn't even the only example of it. Florida International covered the spread against Arkansas. Okay, yes, but to be fair, they're one of the worst CUSA teams. They're definitely not going to a bowl, and they covered they covered the spread. I mean, they only lost by I think 21 against an SEC team. That's pretty impressive.
yeah,
Plus, also a couple weeks ago, Jacksonville State, which was an FCS team a year ago, covered the spread and actually had a chance to beat South Carolina, another SEC team. So I guess like the SEC's like arch rival is the Big Ten. It's Conference USA.
yeah,
Like this shows like again we've been high on this conference and I kind of thought like I mean after like the thing is I was willing to take a shot on Jacksonville State. I'm like, yeah, whatever, take a shot. And if it's wrong, whatever. But that was provably correct. It's like actually that game was pretty competitive. And then I was much more willing to take a bigger bet on New Mexico State. And then that was good too. But like man, like this is Conference USA is good, and the bottom really it shows that the bottom is really kind of falling out on the SEC here. Like it's the SEC is nowhere near as strong as it used to be, and that's the thing. And it's funny because the SEC used to be basically people used to kind of mock them. It's like oh you always book these like FCS teams the week before Thanksgiving as a bye week, and like yeah, guess what? Alabama won. Alabama scheduled an FCS team and they won. They didn't have any problems, and I think Texas A&M's schedule like Tarleton State or something. They won that game. They understood the requirements. Auburn apparently didn't. They didn't understand the assignment. They didn't know how to do the assignment. So like this is the thing. It's like it's and Auburn's going to a bowl too. Like this is nuts. I think this is single handedly my biggest single game win ever with betting. Like and again, it's like, and it's my single biggest win, but it's not even the most I've ever bet on a football game. Like, I mean, that to be fair, that's the power of betting something a 25-point dog. But
yeah,
this is the thing. It's like, yeah, like $10 wins you $150. So like, and again, as I mentioned before, with Bet365, if you go up 17 points, you have an automatic cash out. So there was a moment in the fourth quarter when New Mexico State was going up 17. They had scored. They were up 16. It was a $300 point after 10. Now, of course, it's not exactly that way because they were still up 16 if they had missed. But like, yeah, they went up 17. I'm like, cool. I just got $350 some odd dollars in my bank account. So from a $20 bet, $20. That was it. Like
wow,
crazy.
it was. Yeah, no, that was. I couldn't even dream of it going that well, but very proud as a I'm going to call myself a new conference USA OG because this is
Yeah,
it's so much better without that dead weight that got shipped off to the American. It's a much better
yeah.
conference. It's so much more fun, and it has like a distinct personality.
It actually does. I love Conference USA. Honestly, the CUSA games through the week were better than the MAC games. MAC was they were horrible. Like some of those games were
Yeah,
horrible. And the thing is, the other icing on the cake that's really funny too is that FanDuel has a look ahead line for the Conference USA Championship game, which is between New Mexico State and Liberty. And you would say, oh well, New Mexico State just absolutely obliterated Auburn. They've got to be. They're 11-point dogs to Liberty. So, like, transitively, Auburn is currently only Auburn is a 14-point dog to Alabama. What's Liberty versus Alabama on a neutral field?
yeah. It's an interesting thought exercise. It's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, that's who I
Yeah,
had, and you're doing a 180 on somebody here. It looks like.
yeah. This is Washington State's head coach Jake Dickert, seen here doing the touchdown signal, which they did a lot on Friday
Yeah,
night against Colorado. Wow. I mean, the thing is, this is a big win for them because this keeps them in line for bowl eligibility. It stops the horrible skid. They were on a horrible, horrible skid. So this fixes that. Um, but at the same time, it's just like what a like absolute destruction of Colorado. And I think we're going to talk about the Colorado end of it. So let's talk about the Washington State end of it currently. Um, yeah, absolute dominance, all phases of the game. I didn't see it, but I heard the radio broadcast because I was driving. But so I was listening on the radio because I think Colorado had just scored. They scored. That was with Shedeur Sanders still in the game. They scored a touchdown, and then it was a kick return touchdown. Basically, they kicked off, and then Washington returned it. And on the radio, they said, "quote I don't think they touched him. I don't think they even touched the returner." Now I didn't see it, but I'm assuming that's true because that guy was there. So, but like, yeah, just an absolute dominance on all three phases of the game. And again, like we had been high on Washington State for a bit. They collapsed. Now they seem to be coming back a little bit. Let's see if they play Washington State. They could cause a lot of chaos with a win this week, and it is a rivalry game. This is their potentially. I mean, it's not their last shot at Washington, but it's a shot at Washington that they could have, right? So
yeah,
watch out for them this week. I think this
yeah.
is Saturday night. I think.
It's yeah. I think it's Saturday evening. That sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who lost the week? Yeah, you know, awesome ESPN game day. You go to GMU and you talk about how they're getting screwed and they're the G5 is underappreciated and blah 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 blah. And they show their bona fides by doing what? By putting the game on ESPN Plus. I just I don't know. Maybe they're trying to go hipster and just just go against the mothership that feeds them. I don't watch College Game Day. If they did call this out, then good on them. But it's just too silly just to have this whole thing about, hey, JMU, show them some love, show them some love. Oh my God, it's so unfair. Then you hide their game on ESPN Plus. You failed on
Aren't
this
there
one,
like
College Game Day.
yeah? Aren't there like a billion ESPNs?
Yeah, but I guess I should have checked like who had ESPNU. There were some. Not all the morning games were great. I'll put it that way. There was,
Yeah,
it wasn't like I was juggling 5 games in the morning slot. I can tell you that for sure.
yeah. There was not a lot there, but and the thing is, they did give them some love. There was a Pat Mac. Again, I don't watch Game Day, but there was a clip on Twitter. I think it was on Friday. I'm not sure what Pat Mac. He was doing some sort of weird rant chant thing with the JMU fans. I think it was on Friday. I don't know. He got them all riled up and it's like scary because it's like, oh, I agree with Pat McAfee on this. This is concerning, but it's like, no, I'm right about this. Pat McAfee just also agrees with me this time, but no, it's like I like the thing is, on one hand, it is kind of sad because they had this undefeated season and they were doing really well. And people were like, oh man, if they're undefeated, they should have a chance at New Year's Six bowl. But then they lose, and people are like, oh well, it doesn't matter. They're not going to a bowl now because they've had one loss. And it's like that's the wrong way to that. I feel like some people are going to say that. It feels less important now that they don't have that waiver, and that's not true. But and again, it is. Uh, it's so weird. What is ESPN's take on this? Like, don't they do they control the bowls? Like, can they not go to the NCAA and be like, approve them? Like, I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
can't like ESPN's like, you idiots. This is dumb. Because like, so do you know why they? I think. Do you know why? I read online like why they don't let the them come in for 2 years for the bowls. Do you know why?
Well, it's the most nonsensical justification. It's quote to keep everybody from moving up. Okay, well, if everybody's moving up, then by definition they're going to stink, and this isn't even something to consider.
Yeah.
It kind of sorts itself out. You make a good point though, and I didn't think about this. It's a really good point about. Do you remember back to that stupid tattoo gate, which looks so quaint now, Ohio State, when they
Yeah.
had and I think that actually wound up costing Tressel his job because he told people to lie about it, which eventually came out. But at some point, that broke before the bowl game, and they let all the players involved play in the bowl game, and then they just sit out suspensions, the ones that were still on the team the following year. Although I know like Terrell Pryor went to the NFL the following year.
Classic.
I'm sure that was ESPN saying, look, we're paying a lot of money for this, make it happen. But the same guys that did that can't do that on behalf of James Madison. They can just pretend to care and go to JMU and get their little hipster nod of approval, and literally, and then
Yeah.
meanwhile they don't do anything to actually, to your point, use their power to actually affect the situation positively.
Yeah, so apparently the reason is they don't let them compete in bowl games because they want to make sure that the schools transitioning to FBS are financially stable enough that they don't require the revenue from bowls. Which is like that's dumb
Yeah,
because if they're undefeated or they're eligible for a bowl, then because like you're like, oh, apparently I guess you need to do a lot of paperwork and say we have enough money to be in FBS or something, and you have to like project your revenue. So like you can't use the revenue from the bowls to justify getting up to F. But like that's clearly not the issue here. It's just it's a dumb and a punitive thing to stop. Like it's to disincentivize you from going up to FBS is what it
yeah,
is. It's to keep people down at FCS. And the fact that this is still here, and again, it's just another problem with the NCAA, and again, why it will eventually fail. But for now, we're left with these stupid rules of like, oh, you can't do this for 2 years or something. But anyway, it's really dumb. And yeah, I mean, ESPN could, I'm fairly sure, just say we own you to NCAA and like make them play, but apparently they can't do that. So
yeah. I'll just close out by briefly taking the other side of this and say I very much appreciate the NCAA protecting me next year from Kennesaw State getting a bowl game. I was really concerned about that otherwise, but thank God some adult in the room is keeping that from happening. Oh my gosh, it could have been
they're
anarchy.
like, no, Kennesaw State, you can't factor in potential bowl
No,
revenue into your revenue to justify going to the FBS level. Got to protect me from that.
absolutely not. No way. No. Okay. All right, you've got a good
Yeah,
one here.
what happened? I mean,
Yeah.
so this is the funny thing. So I come back Saturday night, and like I'm looking at the scoreboard, and I've got the San Jose State bet, which that one didn't cash. But then I actually then live bet it, so I got a cash on that. And then I was looking at this, and I was like, Mexico, like it was like I think it was 18-15 at that point, or 18 to I don't even know what the number. It was like randomly really close, and it was like it was in the third, and New Mexico was only down a couple points, and they were getting like 8.5, and I'm like, wow, this is a huge upset. Like, how is this even close? And that's what I modeled, and I found out I had New Mexico State. I had New Mexico favored, and I was like, what? I had them favored, and then I realized I'm like, oh wait a minute, they were like 20 some odd point dogs. That's why I didn't play this, and then I immediately jumped on it, and they won, and I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, what is happening right now? And like then I decided to watch this game, and I'm just like, how is this happening? How is New Mexico beating Fresno State? I have no idea. And I'm like, I won, so I'm like, I'm not questioning this, but I'm just like, what? And this was a Fresno State team that I think they what barely they barely lost to a Purdue team in week 1. They dominated other teams in the Mountain West in other weeks, and now they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna lose to a 4-7 New Mexico team. Like, what is this season? What is the Mountain West? Some of the most nonsensical and like games. And I mean, to complement this, it's also to be said that I mean, Boise State fired their coach, as we had been
Mm-hmm.
calling for weeks, and yet somehow if they win this week, which they're 6.5 point favorites, if they win this week, they will be going to the conference championship game. I and And it actually, as a side note on that, I was like, "Oh, Boise State." Yeah, there's some scenarios where they win it, and I saw Boise State was 6.5 point favorites against Air Force, and I was like, "Oh, Air Force's quarterback must be hurt." And I was like, "Wait a second, let me think about what I just thought in my mind there, and like that is not true." Because I was like, "Oh man, Air Force should be favored," and then it was like Boise's favorite. I'm like, "Oh, their quarterback must be hurt." I'm like, "Wait a minute." They don't use their so yeah. I don't understand that line either. We'll get into that later. But yeah,
Yeah.
what is the amount? Like, this is the weirdest results. I have no idea how this happened, but it did, and it happened live. So
Just
yeah,
out of nowhere. It's like
yeah,
literally just suddenly Jeff Tedford just he took Fresno season to the Air Force graveyard there in Tucson,
yeah.
Arizona,
The
and
the
just said,
plane
"Hey,
graveyard. Yeah,
that looks like a nice spot. Let's just go park there for a while."
yeah.
Um, that was interesting. All right. Do you recognize this play? Did you see this?
No, who? What is this? This is.
This is Louisville scoring
Oh yes, that's
scoring the
right.
winning touchdown against Miami. These two unfortunate gentlemen ran into each other on a crossing screen, and just a crossing play that is done 100 times a day in a college football Saturday. And yet, I don't know if they were confused on the coverage or responsibility, but they went into each other hard. They both walked off the field, which is nice. But literally, this is the way that I cashed my under on Miami under 7.5 wins for the season. Um, just unbelievable. It was a back and forth game, but just man, as much as it looked like Mario had it together, and honestly, I think I signaled the market top by saying he's not doing it anymore. Since then, it's just been a clown show. I mean, he made up for lost time. For the 4 weeks that he kind of kept it intact, he's just like tripled up here and said, "Watch this, guys. You ain't seen nothing yet."
Yeah, there was the debacle with Georgia Tech, where if they'd taken it, they would have won the game, but they decided not to. Then they somehow beat Clemson with, I think, a backup quarterback. Then they benched their starting quarterback. It's been a roller coaster. Um, yeah, and it's so weird that like it goes to say that this Louisville team is definitely overvalued because it's like or I don't know, like overhyped. It's like they shouldn't be this good because they were like a point favorite or basically even against this Miami team, and like Miami actually did take them down to the wire in this game, and they were very competitive in this game. But like Louisville was just a better team, and I mean these two unfortunately blocked themselves, so they couldn't block this. But it's just like wow, like I like it's so weird. Like Miami's definitely had a better year than last year. They didn't lose to at they didn't lose to a Conference USA team this year, unlike Auburn. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, it's just not a great year for them. Like they could have been a lot better this year, and now they're going to be going to some sort of mediocre bowl. So yeah,
Yep. Yeah. All right. Do I have another one here? Yeah. This one, I have to do a victory lap here because man, just look at this list now. This is again what Brett McMurphy tweeted out as like the possible candidates to replace Mel Tucker. I mean, it just and I crapped on this list pretty soon as if after it came out, and we both are fans of Elko, so that's fine. But my gosh, I mean, just I think I actually characterize it as the reason that they stink as a as a football program is because they make up lists like this. I mean, come on. I mean, Dan Enos, Matt House hasn't even started his act of torching, setting fire to the LSU defense yet. That's just hilarious. Charles Huff is now, coming off a straight off a loss to South Alabama. I think it's 28-0, and Pat Narduzzi.
Yeah.
I mean, the jokes just write themselves. What can you say?
What are they,
Um,
3-7 or
I
3-8?
4-3 and yeah. I mean, I just
Something
stopped
not
even
good.
watching. But no, I mean, I just come on. So I have to do a victory lap about just immediately when this came out, just goofing on this list and saying, "Come on,
Yeah.
start over
So
at a higher level." Then
who do they even pick now? Like obviously, I mean, they might not go Elko because of what happened now with cause, Riley got injured, right? So Duke has had a rough year, but I'd hope they factor that into it, but maybe not, right?
uh, I can't ascribe logic to the people that come up with a list like this. You're just thinking these are
Yeah,
clear thinking people. I mean, I just you know, I would say yeah, just typical athletic department X. That's probably the case, but you've got exceptionally dopey people that are making these decisions. Clearly, if this is their list, so
they'll be
who
like,
knows?
Pat Narduzzi, the cabinet was bare. Be like, he made that cabinet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, so just really good job, Michigan State. Well done.
Yeah,
And yeah, okay. What we missed, you know, in part two, we'll get into just how bad he is. But the Greek rifle has just, as our buddy Isaiah said, is the Greek BB gun. I just missed how much the departure of Kirk Chiraka from Minnesota was going to affect him. I mean, I still believe he would be really good with Chiraka. I mean, I made the case. He had good numbers against some really, really, really good pass defenses last season. And man, he is. There's no way to put it other than he stinks this year. The thing is, Chiraka, I'm 100% sold on that. I had an overbet on Minnesota, which so this is kind of two birds with one stone in terms of what I missed. I missed the effect on the one loss total as well. Just a complete whiff on my part.
yeah. It's like Minnesota has been an insane disappointment this year, and it's crazy how like we had high expectations for them, and it's just been not even close. And it's their offense has been horrible. Their defense has been good, but their offense has just been like again. It's I don't understand. Like we have to stop doing this. We have to stop hyping Big Ten West offenses. We're like, oh, Nebraska could be good this year. Nope. Minnesota should be nope. And I mean, okay, we weren't high on Iowa's offense, but we still were, no matter what level we were on Iowa. Like, I think maybe before the season, we were like, maybe 50-50, they break the 25.5 point. Like, 50-50, I think we probably put, minus 110 each way, them getting over 25. And, they're not even close.
Not close,
So,
exactly.
so it's like, no matter how high we are, we should always just shave off a couple points on Big Ten West offenses here.
I do want to point out that is coming the week after Iowa played a game with a closing total of, I believe, 28.5. So that's a really, really big sentence in that context. It's not like, we're looking at even average numbers. There's horrible numbers. It's like, no, it's even worse, folks. Believe me. Okay. Narduzzi Awards. I'm just going to go kind of back to the shtick at the top. Hey, it looks like they caught the guy who murdered Penn State's offense, right? Maybe not. That was just, I don't know. As somebody who had the under in that game against Rutgers, that was a sneakily enjoyable watch.
Yeah.
This is definitely something that probably could have been shelved in favor of GMU, although I think this one was on a Fox affiliate, if I remember correctly. Or maybe it's on the Big Ten, so maybe there was no...
Yeah, I think this game. That's right. I didn't see this game because it was on the Big Ten Network. And fun fact: apparently Canadians aren't allowed to watch Big Ten Network games. I guess I don't know. We can't. There's physically no way for me to watch the Big Ten Network in Canada. So
Consider yourself lucky. I'll just say that. Unless you had the under.
It's not necessarily a negative, to be fair. But yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason, we can get CBS Sports. We can't get FS1. But it's just weird. It's like no Big Ten Network, no. I think we can actually get the SEC network though, so I don't understand why we can't get the Big Ten. It's weird. I don't know, but yeah. So the thing
Well,
is, it's like I had the under on this game as well, and I think it was what 3-0 after the first quarter. So I'm like, this is great. Um, but then at the same time, it's just like, okay, like come on, Penn State. Like I mean, I just had the under, nothing else. But like, come on, like why can they not score? This is Rutgers. Like, come on, you could easily cover the under and put up some touchdowns here. Like that was a relatively close game for the first half, and I think then Penn State kind of put it away in the second half. And they scored a touchdown, putting the game away. But this is the thing, right? Like this should not be that hard of a struggle. This should be like they've got to hire someone to be their offensive coordinator who actually knows offense and knows what they're doing. Like they're currently not able to
well,
do that.
I will say they did have Kirk Shiraka, but that didn't work out. I think the problem's a little higher, and Franklin just needs to just get out of those offensive meetings. I think is the big part, and just let the offense be
Yeah.
offense. Go back to before 2016 when Joe Moorhead was at Penn State. Actually, until literally after that Ohio State blocked kick game where they beat Ohio State, that offense stunk too. And Joe Moorhead just finally had a come to Jesus moment and said, "Look, you got to let me be an offensive coordinator. This offense stinks. Let me actually call plays." And that's really the only time they've had an offense that's been fun was when Joe Moorhead was real Joe Moorhead.
Hmm.
All right, and the second one here is, hey, I guess they caught the guy who murdered the Colorado offensive line, right? Did they catch him? My gosh, it's kind of like what you said that the national writers were saying about Iowa about, hey, this isn't funny anymore. I think we get into that where like this isn't funny. Like people are getting hurt with how bad their line is.
Yeah. No, I mean this. So here's the thing, and it's like I had Colorado in this game, and then I was able to put some stuff like I just bet Colorado like Washington State spreads in the second half to claw some of that back. But like, man, this was brutal, and like it shouldn't have been. I mean, obviously, Shedeur Sanders getting mauled repeatedly. Like, it wasn't even like he got sacked once. And like, it's like no, he got sacked I think 3 times in the first quarter, and then they're like, yeah, then he got like hurt, and then they had to pull him. And it's like this is. I mean, the thing is, we were pretty hype on Colorado to some extent. I think to be fair, we were kind of high on them at the beginning. Like I think some people were really high on them. We were a little high on them, and then I think everybody got insanely high on them. And then that's when we said after Colorado State, we're like, okay, this team isn't that good. And then they immediately got destroyed. And then I think we were kind of like, yeah, okay, maybe they're okay, but like I think this kind of shows the limitations of what you can do in the transfer portal. It's like, okay, yeah, cool. You
Yep.
can get a really cool quarterback and some offensive players and all that. That's great. But there's limitations to this. You can only do so much. And okay, great, you got a really good you got Shador Sanders. That's great. The other guys are horrible. Whoever the backups are god awful. The one and I can't even believe you see this clip online and look it up. It's hilarious. The one backup quarterback throws a pass. It gets batted back to him. He catches his own pass. And then again, once first of all, that's it. Like you can't throw two forward passes. But yet somehow he decides he's
I
going
did
to
not see
again.
this. Oh my god.
He throws it into, and then he basically gets the ball back. And then instead of saying, "Okay, play's dead. I cannot commit two forward passes in the same game," gets the ball back, and then proceeds to throw it into triple coverage for an interception. And it's like,
Oh my
what?
god.
I, I'm like,
How did I not see this? Oh my
yeah, go
gosh.
look it up on ESPN. It's so funny. You just like you see him throw the ball, it come back to him, he gets it, and then the way that camera angle is panning, you see him literally throw it in the direction of three quarterbacks. It's insane.
Oh
But
my
this is
god.
the thing. It's like, okay, great, you got one good quarterback. Okay, what happens if he gets injured? Well, now we have no one. Okay, you have a couple of offensive linemen. What happens if they go down? Well, it just gets worse. Okay, you've got Travis Hunter, who's a great cornerback. What if he gets injured? No, we're done now. And he's also our only wide receiver. And then apparently Dylan Edwards is, I don't know, dead or something because he's not their lead running back anymore. I don't understand what's happening there. So this is the thing, and I think I, and we'll talk about this more, obviously, maybe around bowls and in the off season. But I think, in some ways, the transfer portal is fundamentally changing college football now because we're starting to see now conversations about like for example with Texas. Now this is kind of a weird kind of place to bring this up, but now Quinn Ewers announced he's coming back next year. Okay, that's fine. That was kind of relatively expected. He was kind of forecast to be a second round, like a day 2 NFL quarterback. So he's like, come back again. That's fine. But now, what about Archie Manning? Because he was insanely highly recruited. He was actually only a couple points lower down the Heisman board than Quinn Ewers to start the season. That now, obviously, that was insane. Those people are nuts. But the fact remains that he signed on to come to Texas for probably more money than either of us will ever earn in our lifetime to come to Texas to start next year, right? He's not. Now, currently, Quinn Ewers is starting. Right, and that's the highest profile one. But if there was someone who was going to be starting next year, you would think that would be the guy. Well, then what about Texas's backup quarterback Malik Murphy, who played a couple games when Ewers was hurt, actually wasn't horrible. But like now, if you're another school that needs a quarterback, do you take a shot at Malik Murphy? Do you try to get him in the transfer portal? And now, what about these other ones? Are we now entering an era? Now, this is kind of more a quarterback-specific problem than in other positions because, again, multiple running backs can play a game, obviously multiple offensive linemen, multiple wide receivers. But are we now entering an era where it's kind of more like the NFL, where it's like you have to start an established quarterback and you can't start a freshman, like a brand new quarterback straight from high school? And if that's the case, then are you now going to start seeing these elite quarterbacks going to second tier schools to play a year and then go up to the big this is an interesting question. I was just kind of thinking about this week with that, and I don't know the answer to that yet. So
yeah, it's interesting. When Ewers first got hurt, I remember I can't remember who it was, but somebody made an interesting point. They actually said, hey, Malik Murphy he understands, his future at Texas, and he's actually going to make the most of this to kind of get prominence and be able to land at a much better spot in the portal next year, which is interesting. And that kind of lines up with, what you're saying now. The Arch Manning thing is interesting. Like, part of me wants to say, well, he should just complete the round trip and go to Ohio State, although they're kind of set at quarterback right now.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing now. Like, Kyle McCord, okay, he's starting a quarterback this year. He got the job. But when he had to fight against, I think who their backup was last year.
Devin Brown.
Yeah, there's very few freshmen in the Power 5 that are starting. There's very few that are starting this year that weren't there last year, at least in a backup role. And I think, is this now the new future where, because here's the thing, if we're now in an era where you have to be competitive every year, and the thing is, before, coaches were allowed to have a down year, right? You could have a down year that says, oh, you know what, we lost so-and-so to the NFL, we lost this guy, we needed to start our new guys. You don't have to have that anymore, because your athletic director is going to say, well, you could have gotten some guy from the portal. You could have gotten so-and-so. You could have gotten so-and-so. Right? Are we now in an era where you have to be competitive every year, and if you're not competitive, then you're done? And if that's the case, then people are just going to go grab some quarterback from the transfer portal. They're not going to develop their own.
No, yeah. I think that's in line with, you've got a lot of coaches that basically shouldn't be coaches. They're just, they're coordinators plus. And there's just a dearth of real good head coaches. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with it too. There's just, the fluidity is great for for the players, and I'm happy for them. They can make more money and be where they want to be. But the coaches are going to be stretched even more thin in terms of, specifically to your point, the quarterback position. It's unique. It'll be interesting to see who comes out the winner in that, in that position long term. Well, as many problems as my team's had this season, I think that we will never lack for a quarterback because, number one, we're in Southern California where you can just walk down any street. There's a backup quarterback that could play for a Pac-12 team. And then our head coach has, 4 Heismans that he's coached. So the one thing we can rely on at least.
Well, that's the thing, right? But and there's obviously that. But if you're Archie Manning, if you're now not looking at starting next year, why would you have gone to Texas in the first place? Would it not made more sense to say, okay, I'm going to go to Liberty, or I'm going to go to Middle Tennessee State? Maybe it's a bit extreme, but I'm going to pick some other random school, start there for a year, and then I'm going to get my free transfer and then go to Texas, right?
You know what? Go ahead.
That makes a lot of sense. That might be where we start heading in the next few years.
I see what you're doing here, and it took me a while to catch on. This is just your way to convince me to say, yeah, he should go to Florida. Okay, you got me. It took you a few minutes, but you got me.
No, I mean little bit, but the thing is, like, it is true, though, right? Like,
Yeah,
there is,
no,
like,
it's yeah.
this might be something we start talking about the next couple of years, where like your 5-star quarterbacks say, I'm going to go to like a G5 school or somewhere I can start immediately, and then transfer to the big schools.
Actually, you know, it would be interesting depending on Jackson Dart. He might just, if I'm him, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world just to go wherever Lane Kiffin is, whether that is Ole Miss or if he lands at A&M or some other program. That might not be the
Mm-hmm.
worst decision for him. All right. Yeah, this is something.
Yeah, I love this. So I saw this is so insane. I saw the box score, like the score line. It said Arkansas State 77, Texas State 31. I'm like, what happened? This must have been a complete and total defensive collapse, and they must have done nothing on offense. And I look at this box score, and I'm like, what? Like they put up almost 400 yards passing, and then another 170 on the ground. And I'm like, okay, well, what did the other team do? And the other team had like 196 yards passing and then 300 on the ground. I'm like, you outgained them and then lost by 46? And then it's even stranger because you go into it and you're like, okay, 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns. Okay, that's not great, but okay. And then I think there was a fumble recovery return for a touchdown. Okay, also not great. But that's only 21 of the 46 points they lost. Where are the other points? Where did this come from? Where are the other points coming from? I don't understand. This doesn't add up.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess when you say that, what did the other team do? My first answer, just reflexively, would be anything that they wanted. If they scored 77,
I mean,
um,
basically, like somehow
yeah.
Arkansas State is going to a bowl, and I like early in the season, I was like, if there was relegation, this team would be an FCS team. But apparently, they're going to a bowl now. So,
Well, they did change quarterbacks, and that changed their season. It's that Jalen Rayner, I think is his
yeah.
name. That
Mm-hmm.
kid, because that other guy stunk. I mean, that other guy. I don't know if I put that. That's what I missed. But he pretty much has turned the good news or the bad news is the good news. The good news is the bad news. He turned their season around, but now they're stuck with Butch Jones as their head coach.
That's the
So
thing, right? So,
my gosh, 28 points in the third quarter. Yeah, Jalen Rayner 14 to 17 for 196 yards. Man, that's over 11 per toss. The one thing I'm just trying to see while I'm talking here is there had to be just horrible punting or punt coverage by Texas State here. Has to be with just, I mean, if they're having so many points on so few yards. Let me see punting 4 for 41. Yeah, there were some, oh geez, here you go. No, that's punting. Here's kick returns. Oh, there's a kick return for a touchdown as well.
oh, okay,
Jeez,
that's
what a
28
crazy
points
game,
on
man!
defensive special. Yeah, just
This game had to
wow,
take like 5 hours to play. I'm thinking. They
probably
could have
yeah,
had like okay, that's a good one by you.
yeah.
Okay,
So yeah, this is I guess a new segment. This is things that really annoy me this week. So I mean, again, to be fair, again, obviously I should state that I am an Oregon fan, so you can theoretically say this is pro Oregon bias, but this is also really annoying and dumb. So I saw on the media, and to be fair, this is now translated into Heisman betting odds because Jaden Daniels is the favorite for the Heisman now. And people were like, "Wow, 6 passing touchdowns. He should be the favorite for the Heisman." And now remember, he did this against Georgia State, and then he became basically like all this hype. And I'm like, "Oh, Bo Nix must not have had a good night. What did he do? He also passed for 6 touchdowns, and passed for 404 yards,
they
and
had basically
actually
the
less
same game
passing."
here.
Yeah. Now
Literally.
to be fair, Jaden Daniels did run for 90 some odd yards and 2 touchdowns. But to be fair, again, this is Georgia State. Oregon did that against a Power Five team. That's actually a pretty good Power Five team. They beat them, I think, 49-13. That was actually Arizona State's second. Like that was actually their second worst game of the season. So it's not like this is a team that got repeatedly blown out. Their first one came against obviously Arizona lost 55-3 against Utah, and Oregon was actually playing against one of Arizona State's better backup quarterbacks. So that like it wasn't even one of their bad backup quarterbacks. So that's don't worry. worry. We're not, don't worry. We're gonna be
Yeah,
say very nice things about Arizona State next year, so we could say that now.
yeah.
But no, like, I don't get it. I don't understand why. Like, and I said a couple weeks ago, I'm like, okay, so like, because when Bo Nix and Michael Penix were even in the Heisman betting odds, I was like, oh, okay, so we've clearly just decided that whoever wins the Pac-12 championship game wins the Heisman for some dumb reason, even though that's not how this works. But now apparently we've decided to give it to Jaden Daniels, who is they're not even going to win their division. They're not going to the to the championship game. They lost to Alabama. They lost to FSU. I I don't get it, but okay. I'm
I,
just yeah.
I will not to take the other side of this because I agree with you that it's absolutely stupid to say, well, based on what we did against Georgia State, that's dumb. But Daniels is having so my Apex database goes back 11 years. He's having the third best season of any quarterback ever
Mm-hmm,
in the database, and he is running for a boatload of yards.
mm-hmm,
He does have 3 losses, so it's a little tough. But yeah, to do it basically on what do they call it, like a sleeper Saturday or whatever, like take the week off Saturday for
mm-hmm.
SEC. Yeah, that's dumb. That's just clearly it's
Yeah,
laziness. It's
it
just
is.
it's typical. These people that just take whatever narrative they're fed and just go with it.
Yeah, they're like that. Yeah, they're like that's a cool narrative. Here's another one that's cool too. It's literally the same people too. And then so last week Washington was 1.5. I think in some books they were 2-point dogs. Again, that doesn't change this point at all. But basically, people had been like, and even before last week, they were like, why is Washington ranked behind Florida State? They should be ahead of Florida State. Again, completely ignoring the fact that Florida State actually beat LSU. But anyways, they're like Washington should be ranked ahead of Florida State, and then they beat Oregon by 2. So again, yeah, technically they covered the spread and won the game outright. But to be fair, they were underdogs in this game, and they won. And now it was a short underdog, so basically they could have happened. This is within a field goal functionally, within basically definitely within the realm of expectations of the betting markets. So they're like, okay, clearly now we should rank Washington. They weren't people said they weren't going to win. They won. It's time to rank Washington number 4. They've earned it. And then now they played Oregon State, and guess who plays Oregon State this weekend? Oh, that's right, Oregon. And look at how big Oregon is favored against Oregon State. They're favored by 13.5 points against Oregon State. So remember, Washington was an underdog to Oregon State. Now Oregon is favored by 13.5, 2 scores. So this is the book saying Oregon is better than Washington. The only reason Oregon lost to Washington was because they played in Washington, and even then it was an insanely close game. And Oregon's the better team, and that there's a reason why Washington maybe shouldn't be the 4th-ranked team in the country. Now they probably will be because of what happened uh, to Florida State's quarterback, but this is insane. Like, you can't say, oh, Washington beat Oregon State by 2, therefore they should be number 4, when Oregon will play the same team this week and they're favored by 2 scores. That's insane. That makes no sense.
Let me take the other side of this, and this might be the moment that the podcast officially dissolves here. So if you're going to say, and yes, Oregon is a stronger favorite against Oregon State than Washington was and finished. I'm going by your rankings here, okay? Your rankings, not even mine. If we're doing the resumes, if I'm taking the best wins, the best win between Washington and Oregon, the best win first, number 1 is Washington beating Oregon. Number 2 is this win that we're referencing right here against Oregon State at Oregon State. Number 3 is actually the win at Arizona. Number 4 is the win at USC. Those are all Washington. Number 5 is Oregon beating USC at home,
Mm-hmm.
and then number 6 is actually Washington beating whatever you want to make of them, Boise State. If we're saying by who deserves it in resume, I have to put Washington ahead of Oregon.
That's
I
true.
have to.
No, 100% on resume. No, like there is no argument. That's fine. But again, that's not the only thing you should be basing rankings off of. I get that that's a lot of what the College Football Playoff Committee does, but like on resume alone, like again, and to be fair, this doesn't matter because this will be very likely. Well, it will either not matter or it will be resolved in the field. Like theoretically, if Oregon State beats Oregon, then none of this matters anyway. But like this will be resolved on the field, right? So it just doesn't matter. And
Yep.
like again, the rankings come out tomorrow. If they rank Washington ahead of, I mean, they will rank Washington ahead of Oregon, and if Washington's number 4 and Florida State's 5, doesn't matter. That doesn't matter at all. But like, this is this is the point, right? It's just like this will. So it's an annoyance. It's just like you should if you're just making the argument of like, oh well, this team deserves it because of strength of schedule. It's like, well, this team is clearly better than this team. The strength of schedule doesn't matter, right? So, but
Yeah, and what's interesting too is Oregon, I think, is a unique case in that they had a, I guess I'd say, an unfortunate schedule draw in that
mm-hmm,
they missed Arizona, uh, and they didn't get Arizona State from the South, and so they lost a chance to get a quality win. Um, I think that probably hurts them as much as anything else. Um, I just kind of looking at the quality wins there. Just Washington just had these wins that are kind of all right. They're in a little bit of danger, but they should have won anyways. Which is the ideal kind of like, okay, just do your job and move up in the rankings. And it just seems like Oregon didn't have those kind of games aside from
mm-hmm,
USC. And the thing is, that's at home too, which is going to get you less points. And that brings me to, even though it's weird, especially Oregon versus Washington. We don't really. This might happen before, but we don't see it in such up close because they're so close. In the standings and the rankings and everything. I've got Oregon so power rated, ahead of Washington, especially like a month ago. They were like 10 or 12 spots difference. And it was completely flipped in the strength of record because of that weaker schedule that Oregon had. It turns out that Texas Tech game wasn't that great. And they just, they drew kind of an unfortunate and they lost the one great opportunity they had. They actually outplayed them, except for like I went to them at, I think it was a deeper dive, just, the 3/4 downs and the subsequent possessions. That's where the game was lost there. Which my power rankings don't say okay, higher leverage, we're going to count a triple. It's just like, okay, it's another play, and it just seems that Oregon played very, very, very well in that game. So I think it's just a matter of bad scheduling luck.
mm-hmm. And again, to be fair, this doesn't matter. This will be resolved on the field, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which is again like, and I'm okay with like again, 100%. Yeah, you should rank Washington. Like, if I was on the committee, I would put Washington ahead of Oregon because again, they do have the head-to-head win, and that's fine. But at the same point, this is a dumb argument. Like,
Oh yeah.
like,
No,
the
especially saying
argument
that on the
itself is
strength
dumb.
of yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
Because
yeah,
Florida's especially, it's not like Florida State. Yeah, they had a rough start, but it's not like it's not like they looked like Michigan struggling against November Maryland.
mm-hmm.
Um, it's yeah. So okay, yeah, I agree with that. Oh, I had one too. I had the BuckMetrics things that annoys me this week is a co-host who doesn't state a format and puts his own stuff in the. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, I know.
I like this. I like
Yeah,
this. This is good.
yeah. Like I saw these. These really annoy me. I was like, this is nuts. Like,
Yeah. Okay. Following up on noted for future reference, Jordan McLeod by far his worst game of the season. When the spotlight was the brightest, unfortunately, in that overtime loss to App State, is Apex was a 68 for the game, dropped to still a very very nice 132 for the season. Illinois quarterback John Paddock, formerly of Ball State, looked like the John Paddock of Ball State against Iowa, throwing for all of 41 yards against Iowa. Congratulations, Mr. Paddock. Well done. Um, Air Force, what, I mean, the 6 turnover loss to Army, then you lose by 10 to Hawaii, and then they got shut out in the second half by UNLV. Okay, UNLV is a good team, but it just, I don't know. This seems to be Air Force. I think we have to put them in that group of teams that's like, okay, they're going to do like one or two just dumb things, just reliably. Last season they were so good, but they just have like those 2 losses that were just out of nowhere, inexplicable, just to worse teams. I mean,
mm-hmm.
if you were going to, I don't know. I mean, okay, UNLV would probably be even, I'm guessing, but if you're going to make a line again for Air Force against Army or Hawaii, they'd have to be like 10-point favorites at least against both of them. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. It's just
I think there must be something. 'Cause, like, there is like a weird number of like there's games like this, and we see them year after year for like I'd point out Miami, Air Force, North Carolina. Add to the list. even potentially Louisville because they struggled a lot against UVA. I think we should probably look into this more in the off season and be like, okay, this had to have been predictable. Like the Air Force ones, they like the book spreads were pretty good at that. It's like they knew something before we did. Like the book spreads for this one, but like for Miami and for North Carolina, they were a lot worse. But to be fair, those are much more public teams, so maybe they didn't care. But there's got to be something we're missing with some of these teams, and maybe we got to figure out what that is, and we can spot that in other cases. Because like it's extremely profitable betting on like 20-point dogs. We should do that more.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last follow up, I mentioned that Joe Milton was a 103 Apex versus Missouri. Then only a 36 versus Georgia. I mean, I'm not to pick on the guy. Georgia's not an easy team, obviously, to play against. But Georgia's defense is not as good as the past two seasons, and you know, that's a rough couple of games. Missouri's defense is not really awesome. I'll be interesting to see if he's able to bounce back versus Vanderbilt, or if Vanderbilt's going to get a little, to use a proper noun as an adjective, get a little Dickery, and go, okay, I'm a smart defensive coordinator. Can now just outfox this guy who's struggling a little bit. That'll be interesting. I don't have that as a play or anything. It's just one of those things that I might keep my eye on, just as like a maybe potential story that might develop on Saturday.
Hmm. Yeah. I will say that like Georgia seems, and I think it's very likely they seem on pace for an undefeated regular season. It's Georgia Tech. That being said, Georgia Tech does weird things, but I don't expect them to do something weird this week. It's like Georgia Tech is clearly not as good as they were last season, but also the entire SEC is nowhere near as good as they were last season. It's like everybody got like Georgia got worse, and then everybody got even more worse. Um, and they kind of got lucky that way. And I think we look at this and like we clearly see it, right? And again, we're calling out the fact that CUSA is absolutely handing their SEC asses to them. But other people don't necessarily understand that fact. I think to everybody it's like, well, Georgia undefeated season, yeah, maybe not as good as last year, but it's the SEC. And I think we're sitting here being like, hey, guess what? The SEC's not that good this year. They're not that good. And the fact that Georgia's cleaning up with them isn't necessarily that good either. Like, okay, yeah, they are cleaning up, and clearly one of the best SEC teams. But like, if the SEC is losing games to New Mexico State, there are some problems here.
Yeah,
So yeah, like I think this is something we see, and maybe maybe we were still too generous to the SEC. Maybe we thought there was more there, but they're I think the entire SEC is just like Florida tier. Like they're all just bad. Like and again, like Florida, every week puts up like a billion points against SEC teams, and then they score a billion points against Florida, so it makes up for it. But it's just like they're all just bad this year. There's none of them, like, with the exception of Georgia and I guess Bama. I guess it has to be Bama, but like they're all just bad. Like Bama, I mean, but even then, Bama, like, miracle turnaround the season. I mean, they lose to Texas and they bench their quarterback for basically an entire game. They play an entire game with just backup quarterbacks. I guess Nick Saban just proving to everybody that they both suck, to then immediately put Jalen Miller back in and go on a miracle run.
yeah.
Like,
No, that was
it's
it. I'm convinced that was it. It was like, okay, everybody just shut up and watch. You're going to get what you want for like one game.
it's
I
like,
don't want to hear
yeah,
about it ever again.
yeah, you want me to bench Jalen Miller? All right, here you go. Oh wait, they suck. Oh wow, that's crazy. Who could have seen that coming? It's crazy that we were playing with this guy, not the other two guys. Wow, you never question
Yeah.
my decisions again. Like they're just like, we'll let USF get close to winning. They're not going to win the game, but we'll let them think they can win this game.
Yep.
Just insane. But yeah, no, and again, I'm actually the thing is, and I'll preview. We'll talk more about in my deeper dive the CFP, and it's actually going to be like whoever the 4 teams that get it is actually going to be very good. It will be a very good 14 playoff, and I'm actually very excited for that. So, yeah,
Yeah. Agreed.
it's going to be 3 very good games. It'd be better if it was 12 teams, but it's fine.
Yep. All right. And then just some new items. Boy, this was a sneaky bad beat. Memphis, SMU under 66.5. It went over by like 3 points, and um, Memphis had a meaningless late touchdown. And on the play before they scored their meaningless late touchdown, honest to God, the Memphis quarterback, and I had a small one on this. This didn't like ruin my week or anything. It was like about a tenth of a unit, but just amazing. Honest to God, the Memphis quarterback threw a pass that was tipped by three SMU defenders, but none of them could hold on to the ball. And the very next very next pass, he goes for a touchdown to go over. Boy, BYU lost to Oklahoma on a pick six. For a while there, I was thinking about our buddy Brandon, Big 12 Mafia, because you might recall he actually made that crazy prediction, and we thought that I don't know. I guess we were given the benefit of his BYU education and saying, well, he's not drunk, but what on earth is he thinking predicting that? And my God, BYU came to play. Did you see any of that game? Or I had that like as my
I
third game I was watching.
I was kind of following the game. I wasn't watching it, but I was following it, and it was just like Oklahoma scores, BYU scores. And I'm like, well, that's weird, but okay. Then Oklahoma scores again, okay. BYU scores, that's okay. This is concerning. And then Dylan Gabriel went down, and then now I don't know if he's playing this week or not. I It was a head injury. It's probably a concussion. I don't know if he's playing or not this week. But they just kept going back and forth, and eventually they pulled out the 7-point win. But it's a lot closer than it should have been. That should not
Yeah.
have been that close. I mean, okay, I don't know.
No.
I don't know who Oklahoma's backup quarterback is. I hope Gabriel's okay and he's playing this week. But it should not have been that close. So
Yeah. They've been, I don't know. I was really high on them earlier, but man, they've been hard to figure out. They've had just too many games that are too close, but their ratings are still good. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I'll have to check their BuckMetrics at some point on that. Hey, look at this. Guess what? You started Anthony Colandrea, Virginia, and you won the 62 Apex against a good defense in Duke, and you won. You won your third game of the season. Go figure. If only somebody had like mentioned, hey, why don't you play this kid? I don't know.
they put they
it
put
was
Tony
Musket
Muskett back
hurt.
in the gun case.
Well
I
said.
mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it's absolutely insane the amount of loyalty they showed to a D2 call up. I don't understand. Like, I guess
From
he was
Monmouth,
yeah,
it's not even like a small school in the South where you can hide people. Who hides
incarnate
a
word.
good player at
Like,
Monmouth?
yeah, they do. The only reason I know Monmouth is because they do polling. They do like political polling. That's the only reason I even know that university exists. So yeah, but no, like, yeah. I mean, he's going to clearly be either their starting quarterback next year or a starting quarterback in, I guess, the SEC. Probably that seems how this
Yeah,
works.
sure.
So,
Why not?
yeah, I'm, I'm like, here's the thing: we're gonna bookmark this kid. We're gonna follow him, and maybe even to the NFL one day. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this kid goes next year. So
Yeah. Yep. This is interesting. So DJU had a 153 apex before the Washington game. He had just an apex at 9 in the Washington game. Now I know it rained. Washington was the best pass defense I think that he faced. Let me just kind of confirm that. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Where is you? Yeah, the other one was UCLA. He actually had a good effort against UCLA, surprisingly good. Although Oregon State just like dominated that in all aspects. This is interesting. I'm going to kind of get another data point when Oregon faces Oregon State. I want to see how DJU does there, and just I'm kind of curious about how is Washington legitimately good on pass defense, or is this just a bad DJU game? So I guess the worst that DJU plays is more informative about how little we should give credence to that one-off game against, or that single game against Washington and Washington's defense. And I bring this up because if I'm looking forward to the Pac-12 championship, Bo Nix has faced one good pass defense all season, and it was Washington, 75. His apex in that game was 121, which is good, maybe very good, but the rest of his games he's averaged a 182. So it's interesting. That kind of falls into, why was that their worst game of the season? I think Bo Nix versus that Washington pass defense might have been some of that. And so it's that's kind of one of those things I'm going to look at this week again, is just how does DJU look against Oregon? Can we impute or infer anything about that about the Washington defense? And does that mean anything for the Oregon? You've got this little kind of triangle of games here that we can maybe kind of come up with some kind of information on that. It's going to be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oops.
Black Friday
All
shirt.
right. Yeah, I turned
Uh,
that off too, but that's not
yeah.
that. That's just that. I told you,
McAfee said,
it gives me
yeah,
ads. That's the stuff that's popping up in Japanese when I was in Tokyo. Who
yeah.
knows what it was selling me there?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
now we're gonna
McAfee
get
again.
this.
No,
Yeah,
it's all good. No, it's McAfee is.
awesome.
It's funny how like all antivirus things that function just become malware now. It's great. So
Yeah, no,
they
it's
give
great.
us they have random pop-ups that try to scare us into buying things. It's great.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's weird. DJ's had some bad games here and there, but also had some good games too. But those are usually come against worse opponents. But he's still better than Clemson DJU, so we'll take that.
oh yeah,
Um,
by far.
yeah,
And then lastly, Northwestern is going bowling. Congratulations to them. I did not see that in the stars at all
no,
for them this season. So
they,
congratulations to them, and they named that guy the permanent head coach too.
yeah, I would too, right? It'd be like, yeah, it's no
Yeah.
brainer. Like, it is absolutely insane. Like, I did not see this coming at all. Like, if you had said to me back in August, by the way, Northwestern's going to make a bowl, I'm like, no,
No.
you're joking. Like, where are 6 wins on their schedule? But they have, I think they're almost at, they're over 6 now, right? I think they're yeah, I don't know if
Where
they're
were
really
three
playing this
wins on
week.
the schedule?
Yeah, yeah,
Going into the season was like, no, they're going to win maybe two, maybe two.
yeah. And they beat, like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to beat Wisconsin. I'm like, what? But no,
Eh,
it's absolutely insane the turnaround for this Northwestern team. And yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, name that guy head coach, 100%. Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. You're
yep.
Northwestern.
So
He's fine.
maybe the maybe
He's massively outperforming expectations,
maybe the
right? So
problem all along was Pat Fitzgerald. I don't know.
yeah,
On the
this guy
offensive side of
was
the ball, at least.
he was secretly running the team the entire time.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay. Well, that is it for part one. Thank you,
Yes,
everybody. And we will catch you in part two shortly.
yeah, we're gonna do part two. I'm excited for part two. We got some good stuff coming up in part two. So see everybody there.
Yep.